Welcome to our panel, Celebrating Global Dignity. Today's program is brought to you by Pillars for Dignity in collaboration with Foundation for the Support of the United Nations, FSUN. We have the chair, FSUN, Janet Salazar, with us. Thank you, Janet, for partnering with us. I'm Naila Hussain Chaudhry. With me is my co-host, who's an amazing change maker, Farah Ahmed. We are co-founders of Pillars for Dignity. Together, our purpose is to collaborate, unite, and empower everyone in creating a life of dignity, especially the underrepresented women and girls. Last 2 years have been the toughest trial for humanity. And I think we have awakened to renewed commitment and determination to serve humanity. Like the futurist John Naisbitt says, the most exciting breakthrough of the 21st century will not happen because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human, human values, empathy, and dignity. Today's topic is critical. It's dignity, equity, economic empowerment, and peace. I've been following Dr. Donna Hicks for a while now, and she conveys a simple but powerful message. People want to be treated well, and when they are, it brings out the best in them. But in reality, it's easier said than done. Life has so much obstacles. How does an awareness of dignity influence our ability to lead people so that they recognize their own worth and value? And when we talk about this, there are many things we sort of forget. People kind of makes a mistake between dignity and respect, and they demand respect, but respect cannot be demanded. It has to be earned, whereas dignity can be demanded. It's an attribute that we are born with. It is our inherent value and worth, and we are all born worthy. And on the other hand, as humans and humanity, we are also born with vulnerability. Violated once, it can be devalued and demoralizing for all of us. But we know that dignity is in our hand and we are in charge of it no matter what circumstances we are in. I've been following a bit and enlightened by Floyd's insight about dignity's consciousness and consciousness of dignity. It can be summed up by 3 C's, which is connection, connection, and connection. Connect to our own dignity, connect to others' dignity, and connect to dignity of something greater than us, the higher power. But today we are fortunate and we have to take this opportunity to learn and educate ourselves from our distinguished speakers. And it is a great pleasure to welcome all of you today. And I know each one of you have so much deep insight to dignity, value, and human worthwhile. So going back, I would like to start introducing Runa Khan. Welcome, Runa Khan. She's a Ashoka Fellow, a Schwab Entrepreneur, a Rolex Award Laureate. Wow. Is the founder and executive director of Friendship, a social purpose organization supporting the most hard-to-reach and unaddressed communities in Bangladesh, established in 2002, pioneering the original floating hospitals. Friendship's development solution is serving 6.5 million lives per year, working towards saving lives, climate adaptation, poverty alleviation, and empowerment. The organization creates sustainable solutions and brings dignity and hope to each life it touches. Indeed, as it has touched mine. She is board member of Global Dignity and one of the pioneers to be working in the line of dignity. Going to Carrie Hessler-Radelet. She's the president of Global Communities, newly merged organization dedicated to bringing together local ingenuity and global insights to save lives, advance equity, and secure strong futures. Prior to Global Communities and Project Concern International, Carrie served as the director of Peace Corps under the Obama administration, leading America's iconic international volunteer service organization with programs in over 65 countries, At the Peace Corps, she led historic reforms to modernize and strengthen the agency to meet the challenges and opportunities of 21st century. Carrie is passionate about empowering women and girls to discover their own power and potential to lift themselves and their communities out of poverty, like she has done to me. She inspires me a lot. Welcome, Carrie. With this, Farah, may I hand you over?
Yes, thank you. It's a pleasure. I'd like to introduce Janet Salazar, who is a social innovator, human potential activist, serial entrepreneur, speaker, writer, humanitarian, and global leadership strategist. Janet's remarkable list of leadership skills here. I'm going to read them out because there's so many. Janet, I'm in awe. Janet is the president and executive chairman of the Foundation to Support the United Nations, FSUN. She's the CEO of Impact Leadership 21, chief and permanent representative to the United Nations, FSUN, and permanent observer to the United Nations Economic and Social Council, also for FSUN. Appointed in 2006, Janet has built a solid ecosystem of deep connections and influences in the global diplomatic community and continues to be a strong voice for public-private partnerships inside the UN. And on that note, writer by heart, Janet is currently working on her first book project, collaborating with some of the most brilliant minds and thought leaders in the world. Above all, Janet is a passionate advocate and defender of the right to freedom in all forms. Moving on to Tanya Mantooth. Tanya is the CEO and artistic director of the San Diego International Film Festival. Tanya is a 10-time regional Emmy Award winner with over 60 international Telly and Addy Awards. Tanya began her career as an executive producer when she became the director of acquisitions for CRM Films. Tanya co-founded and was president of the Dakota Group, a highly regarded film and post-production company in Southern California. Tanya has also produced national TV campaigns and award-winning documentaries for Fortune 500 companies. In 2012, Tanya took over the San Diego International Film Festival with a vision to bring international cinema to San Diego and grow the San Diego International Film Festival into a significant contributor to San Diego's economy. Today, the San Diego International Film Festival has grown over 500%. Tanya is steadfast in her belief that the experience of film allows us to explore issues of global impact, to create dialogue, and ultimately develop empathy and understanding in an increasingly diverse and complex world.
I take it from here, Farah, and start off with the first question. And let me start off with Runa Khan. Runa, we would love an insight and in-depth knowledge about how you started Global Dignity Platform and your work with Dignity, and share a story of your life's experience and realization of the high importance of dignity in your life and work.
Thank you, Naila. So Global Dignity was started actually by three friends, and in 2006, it was started by the Conference of Norway, Haken, and two other friends, Pekka from Norway and John Bryant from the US. And I joined them in 2012. And this happened because way back in 2002, I had started an organization called Friendship, as Naila said. And it was something which was not in the line of what I was doing all my life. I went into these communities. Today I realized that they were the most unaddressed communities, impacted communities of the world, because they are in the front line of climate disaster. These are communities on the river Brahmaputra, on the Ganges, which is called the Jamuna and the Padma, and the coastal belt of the Bay of Bengal. Totally ravaged by climate impact every month, every year. And whilst flying with the boats, on these rivers, I realized that this was a boat we had. I realized that these communities who had nothing, I wondered how they survived. And they survived because of the courage and resilience which they had. And there, I saw poverty as I had never seen in my life before. A mother feeding a child with only rice and onions at 6 in the evening. Because when I asked her why she didn't do it at night, she would say, oh, but how can I afford this 1 cent, to buy light? And it's an indulgence for me to have that. I saw communities which had not eaten, 18 families which had not eaten for 2 days, in these areas. Yet they had that strength and that resilience. And I knew, seeing this, I couldn't walk away. And realization leads to a responsibility. And this responsibility was that I would do something. How do you start working with people who really have nothing? And every year, sometimes several times a year, they lose their homes, their land, and they're constantly migrating. I knew that the only thing that they could carry with them when they restarted their lives every time was I needed to ensure that they would carry with them self-respect, dignity, which I should create a platform for their opportunity, and they needed a life of hope. And this is what I've been striving for over the last 20 years. And this is what I feel that we have been successful, because every year more than 7 million people who come to us for our services now. I had started this, but ensuring that there were the values and ethics of an organization, which became the core element. It did not become the limiting factor of the organization, but it became the very essence on which we made decisions, on which we had growth, and we would continue. And this for me was extremely important. And the values were of ensuring that we would create transparency, integrity, dignity, justice, quality, and hope. These were the foundation on which I made the organization and ensured that we transmitted it to the people that we touched. We started off with health, and every respect, we had to ensure that the life which left us had the opportunity of restarting their life. How do you imbue this? A woman coming to you with cervical cancer, they needed cure. Fistula operation, which took half an hour. Women were leading a life of social ostracism, thrown out from the families. We would do that. So all secondary care, healthcare. But I realized that there was one thing which needed also. It was that you needed to imbue and nurture ethical codes in even the children, starting with the children that we touched. And we had this immense program of what we called Code of Ethics. And this we teach in schools and touch everyone, even in our workplaces. And every month we have one essential component of what we call supra dignity. For example, dignity stretches beyond only the word dignity. When everything actually imbues dignity, for example, rights, tolerance, patience, compassion, justice. And this is how we were working. And how, when Global Dignity, the three friends heard about how we work, so they wrote to us and asked me to join and become country chair. And soon I realized that if I could imbue this sense of ensuring that dignity was not only in school children, as it was, when I joined in 2012, but it was carried beyond children. It had to be in workplaces, it had to be everywhere. And of course, everybody knew that and they understood, and really kind of then combined global dignity into beyond schooling. And today, it is now, we are working in more than 80 countries with global dignity, and we have country chairs all done pro bono, and we have wonderful people who are linking this, together. We are also, we have country chairs in each of the places. We have a very good advisory board, and of course the global board, of which I'm very honored to be part of.
Thank you so much. I'll move on to Carrie. Carrie, I'll ask you the same question. Can you share and speak about the first time you became aware of the importance of dignity, equity, and empowerment, and how it set you on your life's journey?
Thank you so much. And thank you, Runa, for sharing your story. You know, when I think about my own awakening to the importance of dignity, equity, inclusion, and peace, to be honest with you, my first thought goes to my grandmother, whose name was Ruth Pearsall. She worked as a high school guidance counselor in Detroit. She grew up during the Great Depression. She was a lover of humanity and a fierce advocate for the civil rights movement in the 1960s. She loved people. My strongest memories of my grandmother are of her at work. She was always firing off a spirited letter to some newspaper or a member of Congress. She was unafraid as ever to speak her mind and to stand up for what she believed in, especially on the issue of civil rights, in collaboration with, and I would say in connection with, other extraordinary community leaders. And she taught me the importance of community. She also taught me that all human beings have equal value, that dignity is inherent in every single human being, and that we have an awesome responsibility to recognize and honor the dignity of one another. And that means developing deep connections with others across boundaries of all kinds. She taught me that across the globe, talent, intellect, and motivation are equally distributed, but opportunity is not. She taught me that people are capable of great things if only given the opportunity to reach their full potential. And she also spoke so passionately about how the systems that we human beings, mostly people of privilege, have created, how those systems have kept those who are poor, marginalized, or different from accessing the opportunities that would allow them to excel. And so she spoke out loudly and passionately about how the systems, like the education system, the health system, the voting system, et cetera, perpetuate discrimination and oppression and keep people of color poor. And then she spoke of the joy that comes from serving others and from working alongside them. You know, she never veered from her message, even though she received hate mail, rocks were thrown through her windows, she was threatened. For many years, I accompanied my grandmother as she went house to house, knocking on the doors, talking with people in her neighborhood about civil rights. I remember when I was 7 years old, protesting and marching, and I remember the police showed up and it scared me. But I really don't ever remember her being afraid, even though people threatened to harm her for shaking up things in our little corner of Detroit. But what I do know and what has guided me is that if there were times when she felt fear, what drove her onward was something far greater, and that was love, and that was love born of her faith. She believed in the importance of the ties that bind us together as human beings, no matter how different we may seem. She believed that we all have a role to play in creating a better world. And she taught me that I personally had a responsibility to work towards ensuring that the hungry are fed, that the broken are made well, and that the wounds of poverty and violence are healed. She saw herself and me as part of the solution if only we would do our part, and that meant action in addition to words. She really inspired me my whole life, and she is one of the reasons I have chosen the life I have chosen. She has taught me to honor the dignity of all people, to build human connections of love, and she has taught me the importance of devoting my career to service and humility. So that's what drives me.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing such deep insight. Salute to your grandmother, that we have someone like you, and Runa Khan also for all the work you have done. Moving to Janet, I'd ask you the same question, please, Janet, if you could respond.
Thank you, Naila, and that was so inspiring hearing again from Runa and Carrie, their stories. Just never, these kinds of stories, you know, real life and how you were impacted by it never really ceases to inspire me. Runa, I love what you do on the ground, you know, from the start, and how you put your life and heart and resources into all that. And Carrie, in my next life, I would love to be in that generation where I could meet your grandma. I think I wish I had many lives so I can join her. I would be, you know, an activist.
I'd love to meet you, Janet.
But I think, I believe that these are really the common thread, like what you said earlier, Carrie, that binds us all together as human beings, especially with us who has been raised and exposed to a higher awareness. I think it's the most important thing, that when we are presented early on with this opportunity and exposure, that we embrace that kind of awareness and decide to do something about it. It's a will to make a change and to make a difference. And my own kind of awareness stemmed from when I was just starting my first company. 6 years out of corporate, I decided, I don't want to be working for anyone anymore, and I'm ready to build my first company. And this was back in the Philippines, so I did that. And because of that, first company, I was able to be one of the first female members of the Rotary Club of Makati, which is the business capital of the Philippines. And I was the youngest female of the first batch of only 3 females to be inducted and accepted to the Rotary Club back then. And one of the first projects that they decided they wanted to kind of like expose me to, maybe as part of my test, so to speak, is to take us all 3 women to a site. It's a garbage dump in the Philippines, outside the city, and it's called the Smoky Mountain. So it's pretty much a community where everybody lives, and they live with the garbage, and their homes are there, and just boxes and stuff, and some existing makeshift so-called spaces that serves as school, where the little kids go there. But the point is that it felt like all their lives, from the time they were born to the time they grow up, but a lot of times they never get out of that garbage dump. And to me, that was horrible. I think it took 2 or 3 weeks for me to get it out of my psyche. It's like, to me, it wasn't acceptable. I cried and cried, and it really impacted me so much, because in my young mind back then, how could that happen? I mean, I blamed the government, I blamed everybody, and then after a while, I decided, well, I am put in a position where I can make a difference. I have my business, I have my resources. I'm part of a business association that's very powerful in the business community in the Philippines, and I should do something about it. And I asked myself, maybe this is the reason why I became part of this organization. So to make the story short, I started to advocate to do something about that Smoky Mountain area, for first and foremost, because education has always been so close to my heart, thanks to my family. I advocated for that, raised some funds, made sure that the kids have more decent pathway to education after their so-called primary education in the garbage dump, that they're able to have access to community elementary schools and secondary schools outside of that garbage dump community. It's called Smoky Mountain. Now that I'm thinking about it, I recall the nightmares I have, but not to dwell about it anymore. But that was, when you talk about a point in your life where you really decide you got to do something about it. This is not how people with inherent dignity should live. And that's why when Nyla asked me to be part of these conversations about dignity, equality or equity, empowerment, and that translates to peace, I think it really is very important. And these are the kind of conversations that should not be forgotten, that should be mainstreamed out there. Because like what Runa Khan is doing, with her projects, these things sometimes, or for the most part, they're systemic, just like what you said, Carrie. You know, and until we decide to do something about it, you know, it doesn't have to be grand, it doesn't have to be, you know, funding in the millions and hundreds of thousands, but just starting from us, and then let that be a catalyst, you know, for other actions to happen and make that change. I think it's very powerful. So yeah, I'm just now that I'm thinking about it, actually, how many years ago, I'm grateful to have that opportunity, to have been able to see that and have that opportunity to decide that I can do something about it.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you, Janet. It means a lot. But going back to Runa, Carrie, Janet, before I move on to Tanya, I know that our viewers and listeners, for them, I want to say, life has not always been easy for you all. I know how Runa Khan, in which environment she works, because I come from that same place, to what level of grassroots level and what we see, and to hold your dignity, to give it to others, that inspiration. It's a tough call. There are times you feel broken at times. Like, how do you get out of it to face the world and pull them out? I know they inspire you, but people at times don't realize where you're sitting or the journey you have taken. And obviously, a lot of things come to mind that when people are broken, when others break them, how do they get out and hold and be centered with their dignity? While responding in the next questions, if you touch a bit of that, because that is always a question among young people who get depressed and don't believe in themselves. How do they be centered and hold on? That would help a lot. But thank you so much. It always touches my heart to hear you all. And then I turn to Tanya. Tanya, I would love to hear from you the same question answer. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this panel, and, you know, hearing, you know, Runa, Carrie, Janet, your story, your journey, your contribution, what you've done is truly inspiring. So, you know, thank you so much. And Carrie, to your point, you talked about your grandmother, because when I thought about dignity and really kind of what was the point early on when I really experienced dignity, and I thought about it, and I thought of my mother. And because she found herself, you know, in the 60s, she was a single mom suddenly with 4 kids. Wow. And she worked as a waitress. And at that time, there was a lot of shame around that. And I felt that, and I felt her feeling ostracized, but she had a dignity about her. And she would say, you know, let them judge me after they walk a mile in my shoes. And so she was never bitter about it. She just lived her life with dignity and worked hard, and knew she just needed to do what she needed to do. And she did that. And, you know, and I think about that because everybody, you know, we reside on the same planet, but we're not treated in the same way. As I went on to become a producer and a filmmaker, and really through the medium of this, I really had the unique opportunity to see just the whole scope of life, because you saw the best of people and you saw the true suffering of people. And then when you look at kind of what brings people together, and then what tears everybody apart, because we, you know, we live in such divided times right now. And there's so many things that divide us, and it's all of those elements. It's race, it's gender, it's economics, it's health, it's shelter. I mean, all those things divide us. But what should bring us together is that shared humanity. And you can only have that if you give each other dignity, if you don't judge. You know, if you say, I don't know what your path is, but let me assume it's a tough one. And so let me walk alongside you. And so, you know, I've been in the for-profit world as a producer, you know, running companies for a long time. And it was 10 years ago that I was asked to come in and rebuild the San Diego Film Festival. And at that time, I really looked at it as a business model. But what I ultimately came to find, and was really kind of the greatest gift for me, was I began to see that this is a huge platform to be able to bring these important global messages to a larger audience. So I then shifted from, yes, it can be a business model. We all are in that world where we have to think of it in those terms. But more than that, I vowed to use the platform of an international film festival to take these films and to bring them and to look at what do we face, especially in terms of dignity, equity, and empowerment. Because film is that powerful medium that does allow you to walk in someone else's shoes. Because until you can actually feel what they experience, you cannot develop a sense of empathy. You can say you do, but until you truly understand, and Janet, to stand in the garbage dump and see what those kids are living in, you really can't empathize. And that's the only way we'll ever come to a sense of compassion. So that is a real driver for me every day, is to bring these messages out and to bring people together and find a way, how do we bridge the divide and not increase the divide? That drives me every single day, to get voices, especially across the aisle, to find a place of commonality. And that's my journey.
Thank you, Tanya. I've watched and worked with you closely. It's amazing how you uplift others and keep on shining and traveling your path. You have so much responsibility. Thank you so much for sharing the story. Thank you. We move on to the next part, Farah.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just so awe-inspired, and I'm grateful to be hearing all of this from all of you fantastic ladies. It's truly an honor. And with that, I think the second question ties in very well with the first and also our last question. But the second question will go around again, similar format, and wanted to hear in your words the power of human value, moral ethics, human rights, human relationships in regards to dignity. And the specific question for all of you is, how can you be the source of change as a change maker to create awareness? So Runa, I'd love to start with you, and then we'll sort of take turns in a similar format. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Farah, I think I would like to have one thing, what you said, it's all actually one central theme. Each of these words which we are saying are making up dignity. It comes to that one central theme, which is the human being in himself. Yeah. And one needs to reflect this in every action that one is doing. We are serving more than, 65 million people, I think, last few years that we have done with relief. But what is relief? We are giving them one bag of rice. So when we have the volunteers coming and I speak to them, I always tell them, do not take away more than what you give them. You're giving them a bag of food for a week. If you give it in a way in which they lose their self-respect, because many of them have lost everything, then you take away more than what you're giving them. And because of that, when you see, even in the middle of a flood, friendship people are in the water, but we ensure that the people who are getting the relief are on land. I never allow helicopter drops of food if the helicopter can land. In Pakistan, we were doing, when the Taliban had attacked, and there were a lot of people in near, they had come down from Swat, and they were all living in these camps. We were all giving relief, and I wanted to open tea shops. So naturally, the aid agencies that we were getting fundings from said, why tea shops? You go from one tent to the other. You see professors, you see the gardener, you see a man, who was sneaking, a little sneaking thief, in all of them together in this one camp. Beyond getting the food, they needed something else. They needed to be identified with whom they were. So they agreed to having these tea shops, and we went around giving tokens to professors in different camps because they couldn't meet each other's, truck drivers from different camps, and they all had the little tokens, and they would come, and suddenly they found that they were not alone, and they could talk and relate. We have children, in an environment where 5 cents, I'm just trying to translate. Yeah, 5 cents is kind of the earning for the father. 5-10 cents is the earning for the father. And there a child gets, in walking in the field, he gets a $5 note. And he comes and gives it to the teacher. And the teacher says, wow, you've got this. He said, yes, I want to give it to the person who dropped it. The teacher asked him, why are you doing this? How is it that you're not keeping it? He said, every month we are taught, and this is the month of honesty. How can I learn honesty if I don't myself, ensure that the person who dropped it, I can give this back? And this goes on and on and on. People standing in water, every time the floods come in, they lose everything, their homes, the very land they're standing on. And there I was with one of our donors. We were just, we had a boat. Everything was like in the middle of the river, which is 30 kilometers broad, flowing at 10 knots. People standing there, and once we were giving the relief, they're saying, the donor asked, what do you need? This man, knee deep in water, he can't go anywhere. He says, no, we have everything that we need. What inspired that dignity? He has lost everything to stand up and say, no, we have got everything. We don't need anything. And this is the strive. You give them that humanity of understanding themselves, of being able to stand. And then that is how I feel that, you really touch and ensure that, these little steps makes the difference. Because, nurture, everybody thinks that they have got human values in them. We all have it. We all have that goodness. But the thing is, it needs nurturing. Every day we hear about honesty. Every day we are hearing about empathy. We start feeling it. We cannot think that, it's something which we know and it will automatically come. Yes, it does. But our world has changed. And once I remember somebody asking me that, Runa, how do you see, what do you think will be the most difficult thing to find in the future to come? And I said that it is going to be people of character. You see, you can get money. There will be enough people with money. There'll be enough knowledge in this world. There'll be enough technology. But find that one man, to find that one man of character who doesn't waver, who has vision, who follows a path which he thinks is right. That is going to be the most difficult thing to find in the future if we don't start nurturing today. And I think for 20 years, this has been my strive to imbue human values, work with ethics as a focal point for everything that I do. Of course, it's not done, it's not finished. I think these are the little steps that we need to take, and we need to take it daily. It's not once a year, it's daily that we need to ensure this. And so I really thank you for creating this kind of a platform and to hear your stories which you're sharing, which is just amazing, because this is what we carry with us, as we move, and inspires me to carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Runa. That was amazing and very inspirational. And with that, Carrie, I'd love to hear from you. How can you be the source of change as a change maker to create awareness?
First of all, I just want to say how much I'm learning from all of you and your stories and your personal life journeys, because for me, the way I learn and the way I best illustrate important messages is really through storytelling. So I want to share another story as a way of communicating the power of human relationships in fostering dignity and human rights. And part of the reason for that is that it is really through the example of others that I become more fully human myself. And that's why the relationships I have with people like Nyla especially have been so important to me. So as you know, I was Peace Corps director. My job as Peace Corps director was to support more than 9,000 Peace Corps volunteers who worked side by side in villages, mostly communities around the world. And they were there at the invitation of the community, and they were there to do a job that was wanted by the community. So from that perspective, when I think about my own career, really most impact that I've been able to have throughout my career has usually been accomplished through the life force of others. And what I have really tried to do is show up in the lives of others as a servant leader. That has been my way of working, is to support others so that they can be on the front line. So with that in mind, in 2016, I went to Quito, Ecuador, and I was there to visit a Peace Corps volunteer named Alex Munoz. And we met underneath a highway in Quito, the capital city. We were in a small warehouse with a corrugated tin roof and a chain link fence that was surrounded by soaring mounds of recycled material. So it was sort of like a garbage dump, except for it was all recycled material. And Alex's job was that she was tasked with establishing a recycling center in Quito, or a recycling program, really. So as Peace Corps volunteers are trained to do, Alex did a participatory community assessment and discovered that the little recycling that was taking place in Quito was done by women. So the women sorted through the trash every night throughout Quito to salvage anything that was recyclable, plastic, cardboard, metal, so they could sell it. It was in the sale of those recycled materials that they were able to make a living for their families. It was dirty, dangerous work. There are sharp things in the bins that they sort through. There were toxic materials. It was work that was demeaned by others. People called them scavengers. They were looked down upon, and they looked down upon themselves, to be honest with you. Many of them were single moms. Most had no other means of income besides that work. Many had been abandoned by their husbands with children to raise on their own. It was really hard work that called for these women to haul around 80-pound bundles of recycled materials on their back. But it really wasn't the physical conditions that made the work hard, I think, in reflecting. It was the psychological lack of safety that they had. Each of the women, before Alex arrived, each of the women worked as an independent operator. They each staked out their own quarries. They fought each other for the most lucrative dumpsters. They competed against one another for the sale of their materials. They rarely spoke to each other, and sometimes they deliberately thwarted one another. They worked mostly at night because they didn't want their neighbors to know that they picked through trash to make a living. And then I heard from one of the women, when Alex came, everything began to change, because she brought the women together for the first time ever and asked them to talk about their lives in much of the same way that we're talking about our lives here. The women started to open up about the difficulties of their work and how hard it was to make a living. And every woman had a chance to speak her truth. And Alex listened. And then she just made the simple observation that if they worked together, they could be stronger, that if they worked together, each of them could sell more. And they began to see that if they collaborated, they could sell their stock in volume, they could set higher asking prices. And if they worked in pairs, it would be safer at night. And the women began to see each other not as competitors, but as partners. And eventually, after about a year, they established a formal nonprofit organization. The Asociación Buena Esperanza de Pichincha is the name of the organization. And they have elected leaders. They run themselves like a formal business. And amazingly, they have been awarded a huge contract with the municipality of Quito, which has led to their official recognition as an association of environmental promoters. So now the women proudly wear blue uniforms provided by the municipality that says, in a little sort of, they have a label that says Asociación Pichicha, keeping Quito clean and healthy. Now they work in the daytime with pride. They work together to identify small doable changes that they can make to improve their productivity and their health. They found that if they pool their resources, they could buy a plastic compactor, which allows them to fetch a higher price for plastic. And then they bought gloves and face masks to protect themselves from injury. And they recently, as a group, for the first time ever for any of them, have qualified for health insurance. And that was unimaginable just a few years before that. But not only that, they've become artisans. They've made beautiful jewelry and bags that reflect their cultural heritage, and they make these out of the recycled materials. So I visited this and I witnessed the pride that these women had in their work and in who they are as an organization. Maria, who is the president of the association, she said, before we banded together, we were scavengers. People looked down upon us and we looked down upon ourselves. But now we are recyclers. We are artisans. We are entrepreneurs. We are leaders in our community. We are helping to preserve our city and our culture. We are keeping Quito clean and healthy for our children. So today, the city of Quito depends on them. The shopkeepers respect them. Their community admires them. Their children look up to them. The women of Pichicha are leaders in their community, and they are role models for their children, especially their daughter. They have discovered their own potential, their own purpose, their own dignity. And I tell this story not because it's a wonderful story about Alex, a Peace Corps volunteer, but rather because it's about women discovering the power of collaboration and connection. It's about the importance of discovering our own self-worth. It's about how by working together, you can have collective action and financial independence, and you can create human relationships of trust that can transform lives and culture. And you know, that to me is what is essential. It comes down to each and every one of us and our responsibility to be the change right where we are, and how through the power of our example, we can live that for others. So yeah, that's my story.
It takes a village, right, Carrie?
It
Thank
takes
you.
a village. It takes a village, and we learn from each other.
Mhm. Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So Janet, the same question for you. We'd love to hear from your perspective how you can be the source of change to create awareness.
Thank you, Farah. And Carrie, perfect segue, perfect intro to what I wanted to really emphasize here, also based on my own experience and where I am right now. And really, it takes a village, and that power of collaboration is really, really key if we wanted to be that change and you know, help give back lost dignity to so many people, so many women, and then empower them and, you know, help them really again realize that they have that dignity. They don't have to you know, be feeling that they don't have it for the rest of their lives. And again, going back to that power of collaboration, and where I am right now, actually, I make sure that it is that deep conviction of realizing that we each have our own responsibility and to collaborate with one another and to use our resources to make sure that whoever, you know, needs it at the end of the stream, you know, can benefit from it to the fullest. And in my space, where I'm pretty much at the intersection of both nonprofit and for-profit as a business person, and dealing both with, you know, not only the government and the NGOs and consulting with a couple of big foundations, but at the same time, having my own business and running my own companies, is that I make sure that I am truly mindful every day when I ask myself, when there is a decision to be made, I really try to go to that space within me to ask a question about, what my decision will result to, who will it impact, how will it impact the people around me and the people down the line, pretty much, whom I may not be able to see, for example, the result of this project that I just approved, or the project that I just decided to collaborate with, but that, trying to dig deeper and become more aware of, okay, if I do this and I give this and I ask this organization, for example, to give this funding, this particular project, what will it give to the beneficiaries, right? And then we connect that to, that inherent dignity, the human right, to look after themselves, have resources to empower their families themselves, and not be able, not depend on other people for their food, for example, and to put a roof on their heads and stuff like that. So again, going back into a much deeper sense of awareness and being able to cultivate the resources and the opportunities that we've been given with, and the platforms that we're able to influence, and making sure that all these are mindfully designed with other people in mind that needs it, for them to really reclaim whatever lost dignity, or just to empower themselves, or just be economically independent. It's as simple as that. I think is very important. So yes, it takes a village, and definitely the power of collaboration.
Thank you, Janet. That was very inspiring, and thank you for sharing that so candidly with us. And Tanya, moving to you, how can you be the source of change as a change maker to create awareness?
Well, when I looked at being part of the film festival and what can I do and how can I make a difference, and as I began to explore these issues, so yes, I can program films and we can have those discussions, but how can I make a deeper difference? And this was something that, early on when I took it over, the one thing that I saw is we had this education program that we kind of, was already in place. And when I looked at it, I thought, this education program really, it checks all the boxes for grant funding, but it really wasn't doing anything. It wasn't making a difference. It did all the things that a nonprofit education program should do, so it gets its money every year. And I thought, and I had to go up against my board of directors and my colleagues who said, why are you changing it? And you're jeopardizing the funding. And I said, but we're not making a difference. And so I did change it. And they were right. I lost all my grant funding. So what the program was I put in place, rather than serve a handful of students that basically just got the day off and got to come to this, San Diego Film Festival, I took the program and I partnered with the head of the San Diego Unified School District, that superintendent, the superintendent for the County Office of Education. And I went to them and said, I want to take films out and bring in filmmakers, and I want to open it up and make it free to all high school students and talk about these global issues, which could reach 80,000 students in San Diego County. And they both said, we're in, we want to do it. We will open up the access. You can go live in the schools. We'll live stream out into the classrooms. We put it together. We flew filmmakers from around the world. We had interaction with and then the San Diego Unified School District says, we'll step up and build a curriculum around each one of these topics. So whether it's sex trafficking or environmental or homelessness, and they did. And sure enough, I could not get any funding. There was one foundation who said, we're going to tell you why, and in front of the panel, we're going to tell you why we're not going to fund you. And I said, why? And they said, because you're also serving affluent schools. And I said, I understand that. And let me tell you why I think that's important, because that is the generation that will go to college and they will set the laws, start the companies, do their urban planning. They need to see these as human issues, not issues you push 10 blocks away. They need to see that these are issues that need to be solved, and they need to participate, and they need to understand the complexity of them and not just judge them. And that one foundation did fund the program, which allowed me to, to build it and to sustain it. And what was interesting is, as we rolled out this program, we did take a film out on homelessness. And the film that we took out showed a side of homelessness most people don't see. And that is people that work a full-time job, but still can't afford to have a home. And so they sleep on the bus system. So all night long, they transfer from bus to bus so that they're warm and they're safe. Or they lose their medical insurance and then they suddenly find themselves without a home. It's these circumstances. And so there was one school, and one affluent school, that we showed this film, and it was 500 students, and they were silent after that film because they didn't think of homelessness in that way. They didn't think it could be them. And then we took questions from the audience, and one young woman stood up, and everybody knew her. And she said, "I was homeless for 5 years with my mother." And she had never, ever shared that story. And it was silent in that room. And then the entire audience applauded. So she had feared that judgment, but she had the dignity to stand up and to tell her story. And they saw her differently. And when you think about, how do you make a shift? How do you take a whole next generation of leaders and get them to see why it's important for everybody? Yes, we're all born with the same human value, but we're not treated in that way. And it's the next generation, it's the youth that also need to see why this is important. So that is my passion, to continue that message. And I believe I can set this template and make it available throughout the country, because it is something now that we can stream out to other classrooms with a curriculum and to build that out. And I think it's important. I think that helps move the needle to bring awareness that everybody needs to be treated with dignity.
Absolutely. And thank you, Tanya, for sharing. Truly appreciate that. So with that, we have one final question. I'm going to turn it back to Naila.
Those were amazing stories and real life stories you shared. It's such an inspiration. I want to ask that in your leadership, each one of you and your life's purpose, of course, you practice deep values and practices into your journey and in your work. Would you share maybe one example or a few which sort of you felt made a huge impact? And especially, how do you focus and keep centered with your dignity when the world at times it's falling apart? It's so tough in tough times to hold on and to help others hold on to their dignity. I'll start with Runa Khan.
Thank you. And I'm really very, very touched with your stories. And Carrie, what you've done. Tanya, I think this is really an amazing, step forward. And this linking of communities, which actually we think cannot be linked, I think is central. It's extremely important. You have to take those who have to those who don't have, because they live in two different planets, and we need to link this. It's so important. And Janet, this kind of a stride which you have to make between the two, it is difficult. It is difficult. So thank you so much. I'm really touched with the stories. So what is it that we have that we can try to delve in, and what it is that we can try to do? So I think we are a social purpose organization which has got several elements. For example, it has a humanitarian sector, it has an enterprise, and it also has a finance sector, which blends, which is like microfinance, but with a different modality. And you see, when it's humanitarian work, we need to be extremely careful as to the partners that we work with. It is so easy to be led with the availability of funding and not be led with what it is are the needs actually, how the difference can be made. And I'll share a little story with you, because two very short stories. So here I was, I come from a background which Nainal knows. We really do not, we have, as we grew up, we did not really see ultra poverty as alien to poverty as, somebody living in a first world country and suddenly seeing, migrants or refugees. And there I was trying to make this hospital from this boat which my ex-husband had brought to Bangladesh. And I remember I wanted to make it into a hospital, and we had the chairman of a tobacco company, no names, who had flown in with his falcon, in the morning. And here I was day and night trying to write out, proposals and this and that. And everybody saying, Runa, you don't know anything about development. What can you do? You can't do this. It's impossible, etc. And then we were sitting on, we had this very nice boat, and we were sitting on the boat, and he said, I would be very interested to fund this. And I had to make an instant decision. I said, I am wanting a healthcare organization, a hospital ship, and can I work with a tobacco company? And believe me, after 2 years of struggle, it took me a second to say, no, I can't do it. And it was the very next week that we had Unilever, and one of the chairmen, Southeast chairman, who was with us, and he gave us the funds. Not even, so it was, then there was another later in our lives, a couple of years ago, well, a little more than a couple, we had a $16-17 million more, I think, and a project, and we worked on it. 187 countries, so organizations from all over the world had applied, and we got it. Everything was ready, and then when the final document came, we worked on it for 2 years. Final document came, they had changed the concept, and I knew it is not going to work. So I rang them up and I said, we stopped the deal. And and here I had to speak to my staff before and say that, I'm sorry, but we cannot do it. I said, we are not going to do it. They were so angry. They said, there are so many people. I said, please do it with somebody else you think you can work. I will not do the project because it is wasting my time, energy of myself and the people, who are doing this work for a purpose. So we refused. 6 months later, they came back and gave us the project. We got the project, but it stopped. I stopped it. So you see, I think there are, I think you need to be try to your best to be an example. And then if you can keep that as a focal point and not get led, that creates, that is an example. We have 4,000 people working in the organization, and they will all tell you the same thing about friendship. So I think it's a way of spreading by being an example. And secondly, to take it out a little bit of slightly different, I'm sorry, I'm taking a bit more time, is that, we have things in global dignity and in friendship. For example, a code of ethics. KPMG, for example, in Europe, some of the KPMGs are taking that, even, putting it up on their billboards just to see the values and ethics. We are working with companies from global dignity. We have already a kind of a format on which we work for school children, how we bring it out. And this is something we are very willing to share with organizations, companies, and schools, academia. It really is a modality by which you can quickly come on the same platform, sharing stories, understanding dignity, and working, to build that within yourself. So that is open, and we are very happy to do that. And I'm very, very touched once again for this wonderful, wonderful platform. Thank you.
Runa, you enrich my life every time, and I'm sure everybody listening to you feels the same way. And hopefully we'll create a collaborative platform for global dignity and help underserved and other schools in US to support and grow together. It's been beautiful hearing you. Thank you so much. And I would move to Carrie with the same question, Carrie.
You know, I just really love the idea of creating a collaborative platform with all of you extraordinary women. I really have to say that. You know, when I think about my own life, I am a manager and a leader of a relatively large organization. So like at the organizational level, what I've tried to do is institutionalize policies and procedures and trainings and standards that can help organizations like mine, like global communities, embrace the deep values and reward deep practices in the way we do our work. It's not only about the kind of work we do, which is about you know, building equitable societies, but it's also about how we treat each other at work. It's about creating the kind of culture we want in our workplace that honors the inherent dignity of each person. It's about establishing a set of values and living them. So with that kind of in mind, one of the things that I am most proud of at an organizational level at PCI, and you remember from when Nyla introduced me, my organization, Project Concern International, PCI, just recently merged with Global Communities. But at PCI, I worked with a number of other people, including Nyla, on developing a dignity initiative that was really designed to set the tone and the vision for our organization, emphasizing dignity, the inherent value and common humanity of all people, and really connecting our work in the field with community members and partners and stakeholders with the way we treat each other. So this initiative elevated our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion and set forth the standards for a workplace that was free from harassment, exploitation, and abuse of any kind. It involved mandatory training, once a month training that we had all of our team so that we were all setting a level standard. It involved adapting our performance standards and making sure they were aligned with our values. It meant that we created our accountability metrics to make sure that we were clearly aligned with our values. And part of it is really clearly articulating our values and what it meant to live those out so that we can make sure that we're honoring our commitment to each other. When we merged with Global Communities a year and a half ago, the Dignity Initiative was interrupted. But since that time, in the last year and a half, Global Communities has made a really important commitment to dignity, equity, and humility as our core values. We have committed to becoming an anti-racist organization, and we are living into our DE&I journey, and we have a lot of help from a lot of people to enable us to do that as one combined organization. We're in the final stages of hiring a chief equity and inclusion officer, and I really want to embark on something similar once our merger is complete and we have all our team in place so that we can really institutionalize in some very, very practical ways the living out of our values and the way we treat each other as well as the way we conduct our work. And much of this is tied into the dialogue around locally led development and decolonizing aid and what have you. It's really about pushing decisions down as far as we possibly can. But so that's what we're doing on an organizational level. I mean, it's nuts and bolts, but it's so important to ensure that we are holding ourselves accountable and holding each other accountable for being the kind of people we want to be, that we've committed to being. That said, I really think, and what you've heard today, so many powerful, powerful stories of how all change begins with us. And so when I think about myself and how I deal with the challenges that I face every single day, we all face every single day, you know, I really feel that for me personally, the place where I need to go every day is really a quiet space where I can look deeply within myself with the goal of facing my own biases and my own unhealthy attitudes and my own behaviors that keep me from fully loving others, and to really just make sure that I am in tune with my creator and with other people, because I can't become who I am fully intended to be unless I face my own biases and my own fears with an open heart and an open mind. And I need quiet meditation to do that, because otherwise the busyness of life just gets in the way and I can't be reflective. So for me, having that time once or twice a day is absolutely essential for me to keep my headspace together. There's a quote that I really love. It's by James Baldwin. And it says, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. So I am really a strong proponent in trying to face the challenges, especially the challenges that are deep within all of us, our own biases, our own fears, and our own unhealthy attitudes, so that we can show up in the world and be the change that we really want to be. But in order to do that, we really need to find our own path to wholeness and reconciliation and unity with one another, by being who we are, fully human.
Thank you, Carrie. It'll do injustice if I say something now, because time is running out, because I want to say so much to you. You've been there for me through thick or thin. And that shows that no matter how busy you are, how much you give time to people around you. And I just feel humbled that you're there in my life. Janet, I'll move on to you, asking you the same question, please. And we are a little short of time. Janet, you're muted. Janet, yeah, could you?
Sorry, thank you so much again for sharing your incredible stories. Runa, I'm really amazed by, how right in the middle of the action you are, always like right there, facing everything. That is something, to be honest, I'm not made of. I think I can't do that. But where I am in the space, for the most part, and I think I've embraced that fully, as a role in this entire community of us, doing our share and doing our best to collaborate with each other and to help each other, is at a little bit, more on the behind the scene role. That's what I have embraced, other than speaking and being invited to these kinds of conversations. So for the most part, the biggest role that I play is like an influencer behind an influencer decision makers, to let them know and consult with them and advise them what to do and enlighten them and make that awareness powerful, in terms of, okay, if you decide on this, this will be the outcome. Would you want these people or this community to suffer like this? I do that, the same thing, towards investing. Now I'm into ESG and sustainable investment with my partners, and this has been sort of like a what binds us together as well as partners, is that we always ask ourselves, and for me, primarily, of course, my own, like what you said, Carrie, we can't really do anything or be that change if we don't confront our own biases, if we don't look deeper into our own awareness. And, I've been really fortunate to be like so attuned with that in my own being. And so, again, going back to for example, investing, knowing that, okay, if we decide on this particular investment vehicle to support and put our money into, we know that it will benefit this community, right? It will, we'll get our profit, but at the same time, they will have their profit it's not monetary, but profit of, restoring their dignity because they have clean water, because their communities were not destroyed by pollution caused by, this industrial waste, going into the rivers where they get their, economic, their livelihood, pretty much, stuff like that. So on and on. And yeah, I just wanted to, I guess, reiterate that, and thank you, Carrie, for reinforcing that so much, that it is a reality. And Nyla, you've said it earlier, especially for the last couple of years, it hasn't been easy. I mean, for everyone. And a lot of times we go to that space where we question our own worth. We question, am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right space? Am I giving enough, what I should be giving of myself? But we fail sometimes to realize that, many times we really have to take a couple of steps back and look deeper into our own awareness and taking care of that and embracing that and going back to that space where we could again reaffirm, that yes, I am doing something, I am collaborating, I am, giving my money where, it can create a positive change for other people to have dignity, to have their human rights, etc. So yeah, it's a collective of all this, I believe. But again, the bottom line, and I'm gonna stop on that. The bottom line is always looking deeper into ourselves and centering, and going to that space where we could really always reaffirm that, we are doing something. We're part of a collaborative community. I am part of this amazing women, Nyla, Carrie, and Tonya, and Runa, and Farah, that we're all doing our best to uplift not only one another and then reaffirm, our roles, but also to help other people. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. I feel enlightened after hearing all of you, and I feel that together, like I said, and requested a collaborative platform to keep on doing good to others while doing good to ourselves. I'm going to Tanya now. Tanya, could you briefly tell us your...
And I too would be honored to be part of any kind of collaboration and to work together to do something together. That would mean a lot. And Janet, to your point, yes, I think the last 18 months has been challenging and for everybody. And I think if it really taught us anything, it's that we really can't take anything for granted. And if you think about it, I mean, for the first time, for the first time, everybody was experiencing the same thing. It didn't matter if you were in a home in San Diego, or an apartment in Poland. Everybody had that sense of isolation and that sense of uncertainty about what was happening and the separation from family and community. And it's unfortunate because, in a time that we feel that has become even more divided, which I didn't think was even possible, what really should bring us together is that sense of shared humanity of what we all went through.
Yeah.
And so, one of the things that has been a long time vision for me in terms of moving the festival forward, and I feel even more committed now, and that is to support female filmmakers to be able to tell these stories and to be able to go in and to be able to talk about what is happening around the world and how can we make a difference. And I think the female voices are at a place where they are ready to really take that on, and to take that on in a really bold way. As the artistic director of the film festival, and over the last 10 years, I've seen the increase of women's, submitting films. It's exponential. But more than that, the stories that they take on are bold and experimental. They didn't, initially, they took on very small, intimate, quiet stories. Well, this next generation of female filmmakers, they didn't get that memo, because they are absolutely taking on strong topics. And I love that. And one of the things that, and I know Nyla and I've talked about this, is building a film fund for women so that they can tell those stories, because the biggest challenge they have is funding. And so if you look at men whose films come out of a major film festival and women whose films come out of a major film festival, people will fund the men, even though if you look at the statistics, the ROI on those films are lower, but they'll still fund them. And so, and I've said on many women's panels, and they'll say, why do you think that is? And I think it's simple. You know, I think people support those who look like them. And therefore, what that means is we need more women in that place of funding. We need to be able to open that up, because it's, you know, I think that people tend to gravitate to those who they feel like think like them and look like them. And there's no judgment about that. We just have to build out that community, because honestly, this is like one of the most exciting times to be a female filmmaker, because every day I see studios, distributors, streaming platforms, all moving women into positions of decision-making. That tells me that that's a fundamental shift. Now, there isn't parity yet. That's going to take a while. But by moving women into decisions of film, into these decision-making roles, that means this is not a pendulum swing that's going to swing back. This is a fundamental change that will slowly rebuild this industry. So that's something that I find so important. And one of the quotes I love so much is Hemingway's quote, and that is, the world breaks everyone, and afterwards some are stronger in the broken places. And those are the stories that I want to see told.
Yeah, beautiful.
Wow, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. Before I hand over to Farah, I would like to say each of you are such amazing transformation leaders. At times, your humility and humbleness amazes me. There's so much to learn, so much to hold on to our dignity through our sisterhood and collaboration. When I compare all of you with really big people, Desmond Tutu and Nelson Mandela, they, no matter where their life took them, they held on to their dignity, and none of you are less. And this is where I think there's a thread attaching all of us together. And how do we help others to hold on to their dignity and move forward in the right path with right values? As human and leaders, we have responsibilities. I'll hand over to Farah, but thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I truly appreciate, and I'll follow up with the collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Naila, and thank you, everyone. And just some closing remarks. Pillars for Dignity is truly honored to have all of you on this panel, and we do look forward to future collaborations with all of you. And just a few final words about Pillars for Dignity. The principles of DEEP, which all of you ladies have articulately talked about in the 3 questions and your stories that you shared with us so candidly, dignity, equity, empowerment, and peace. It's all embedded in our mission and vision at Pillars for Dignity. And just on behalf of Naila and I wanted to thank you again. Our vision has been from the very beginning focused on boosting the status of women through literacy, education, training, allowing that woman to let her light shine. As we all know, Janet, especially being part of FSUN, a women's equality and empowerment is one of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and it's fundamental to what we're trying to do here. So with that, I wanted to thank you again and look forward to learning more and sharing more in the future.